Thank you guys for being here. On this first session is gonna be on, I try and break this down as simple as it can possibly be in terms of making 100 grand and multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars if you want to in real estate. I'm a real systems-based person. I think about the world in systems and in formulas, and it's really not that complicated, but you gotta put in the work, right? And that's what we're gonna kind of focus in on, is what that looks like. It's important to be in this room mainly because you guys are getting great information, right? I hope I've learned a lot over the last few years, and I feel like I have a duty to give that back and return that to the universe, because so many people have contributed to my learning and growth over the years. And so every time I get the opportunity to come to something like this, I definitely do. And so congratulations on being here. Thank you guys for being here, because it's always important to come and spend time in rooms like this. All right, so what's the secret to making 100 grand in real estate? This is how simple it is. This is it. You sell one house a month, right? In your guys' market, like 480,000 is like the median price, right? Is that 429? Glad you know, because a lot of people don't know. So I'll use that as a formula here in a second. But it's pretty simple, right? In this market, basically, on average, commission rates and median sales price, if you can sell one house a month, you're gonna make 100 grand. And if you wanna make 200 grand a year, you just sell two houses, right? That's how simple it is. And if you wanna make 300 grand, you gotta sell three houses. And if you wanna make 400 grand, you gotta sell four houses a month. Sounds simple, right? But how do we actually make that happen? So this is the math. We're using a $500,000 purchase price. So maybe a little bit less than that. 2.5% commission is that standard in you guys' market? Pretty much. Sometimes it's a little bit higher, right? 2.7 or 3%. So on average, your gross commission is going to be $12,500. If you're making around 80% of that take home based on your splits with your brokerage, times 12, it's 120 grand, right? So even if the purchase price is a little bit lower, on average, that's how the math works out. If you sell 12 houses a year, you make 100 grand. So the math is pretty simple to figure out, right? It could be, and you just got to multiply that up if you want to do more than that. So how do we do that? So how to sell one house per month? You got to have 100 real estate conversations. This is pretty standard. You talk to any coach, any large scale, team leader, like, we figured this thing out. Like, if you can have 100 real estate conversations in a month, you're gonna sell one house. Even if you don't know what you're talking about, even if you do it badly, like, you're just gonna stumble into it. And it's a contact sport, right? We just gotta have enough conversations. And a lot of people get into real estate and don't like to talk to people or they don't want to have these conversations. And I'm like, what are we doing? Like, what are you doing? Like, this is all about having conversations. And the best people in real estate are people like Ronnie, who are masters at having conversations, right? I mean, if you have the opportunity just to sit and listen to him make phone calls for an hour, you'll learn a ton just hearing how he asks questions, how he carries on a conversation, how he digs deeper into a subject. Like, that's an art. My stepdad was like that. I used to sit and he would be 2 cubicles away and I would just sit there and listen to him and I'd be like, man, this is amazing. And I don't know if that comes with time or if that's a learned thing, but you really, the art of conversations is huge, and you don't have to have 100 if you're really good at it. You can scale that back, and I'm gonna talk about that in a second too. So the question is, right, how do I have 100 real estate conversations per week? How do you have 100 per month? You gotta have 25 per week, and then you have to have 5 per day, right? Make sense? I mean, just breaking it down. And so is that an unrealistic goal, like to have 5 real estate conversations per day? I mean, when you break it down and you make it that simple, to me, and that's just working days, right? That's just if you work 5 days a week. So you don't have to work 7 days a week. And this is one of those time discipline things where if you're focused on achieving this goal, like, you don't do anything else in life until you have your 5 conversations. So, however, there's many different ways to do that. And this is what I can't tell you how to do, because everybody does this differently. I consider doing a great social media post and having hundreds of people watch it as real estate conversations, because you're talking to people all the time, and we can dig further into that. It can be cold calling, right? Some people cold call. At home, I always have EXP swag on. Like, everywhere I go, it's either I have a shirt or I have a hat, and that sparks conversations. Like, I go and I buy an acai bowl, and the girl at the acai bowl shop says, oh, you're in real estate, and we have a conversation. There's a lot of different ways to do that, but you gotta kind of figure out, like, what is your way? What are you comfortable with? Is it door knocking? You can door knock. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you can do to have conversations. You can cold call your database. I mean, you can warm call your database. If you have Zillow leads, the Zillow people call you with a person on the phone. There's all kinds of things you can do, but you gotta figure out what that is. And so the question is, though, right? When you're talking about 5 conversations a day, what is a real estate conversation? How would you define a real estate conversation? This, I think, over time, you'll better define for yourself and your business, but I think this is the easy way to define it, right? You ask 5 questions or you spend 5 minutes doing it. The rule of 5, right? 5 conversations a day, 5 minutes, 5 questions. So it's not just like, how's real estate great? That's not a conversation, right? I mean, you gotta have a couple of different follow-up conversations, dig a little bit deeper, or have a short 5-minute conversation back and forth. So you don't necessarily need a measurable outcome. It's just a matter of having that conversation and then getting better at it over time, asking for referrals potentially. That's another thing that comes out of this is sometimes if you have one good conversation, it adds to another one and another one because they're just gonna say, hey, you should call my auntie or you should call my sister. They're interested. And so you gotta figure this out for yourself, right? This is something that there's no like specific formula on. And then what is the number one real estate conversation starter? What is the number one question you get asked about real estate? How is your guys' market knowledge off the top of your head? Yeah, so how's the market is the answer. You guys are right. I'm like obsessed over market data, right? And the reason is because you can sound really smart if you know market data, right? And you can have a ton of credibility if you know market data. And so like if you ask me, like how's the market on the Big Island, I'm gonna ask, are you looking to buy or sell? Because it matters, right? Like what context am I gonna give you the data in? And if you tell me you're looking to buy, I'm gonna say, well, the market is slower than it was in 21 and 22, but there's way less inventory than there was back then too. Normally there's 3,500 homes on the market pre-COVID, there's 1,900 homes on the market today. April was the first time in 8 months that we had more than 400 sales on the island. There's been less than 400 sales, so it's looking like it's picking up, even though on average there would be 500 sales pre-COVID or during the COVID timeframe. So the market is slower, but if you factor in the amount of inventory, that's what's continuing to drive price. Median price is up 5% from what it was a year ago, year to date. It's still a pretty good time to buy. Interest rates are high, but it's looking like things are picking up right now. And if you wait, it's gonna get more competitive. So if you're looking to buy, do it sooner rather than later, right? I mean, 2-minute answer, lots of different data. But if you're a buyer, like, do you feel more comfortable, and we'll talk about buyer's rep agreements here in a second, like, do you feel more comfortable trusting me to sign a buyer's rep agreement and be your agent than like, it's slower, right? I mean, with no context. So I'm not saying you're wrong, I mean, it's not a bad answer, but like really digging deep into that and not just doing it on a one-to-one basis, but doing it on a one-to-many basis in social media and putting that information out there and being that source of real estate information. So if there's one script or like thing you want to stay on top of, it's how's the market, like having a good solid answer. And then if you're on the other side of it, I'm looking to sell, you can use the same market data, but just framing the context in a different way, right? Hey, it's a really great time to sell. There's still very low inventory, only 1,900 properties on the market when there's normally over 3,000. And even though we've had about 8 months of less than 400 sales, we had the first time we cracked 400 sales in 8 months. So it looks like things are picking up. So based on the low inventory and the new activity from buyers, it's a really great time to put your house on the market. I think we can get top dollar for it. Median price is up 5% than it was a year ago because a lot of sellers are like worried they missed it, right? I don't know about your guys' market specifically, but definitely in our market, they didn't miss it. Like it's still, prices are still going up. You can still get the most you could ever get for your house today, even though you didn't sell in 21. Okay, so the question is how to have 5 real estate conversations per day. I call it green time, 2 to 3 hours of green time. So there's a bunch of different practices on how to schedule your time and prioritize your time. Green time to me, I think money, so it's stuff that's money-making activities, right? I think a lot of agents, we always coach away from this is they love to do busy work because they feel like they're doing their job, right? Like I'm filing paperwork and I'm sending things out for signatures when that's something you can outsource to a transaction coordinator who can do it much more efficiently than you can, and you can spend more time doing green time activities. But I think 2 to 3 hours is really a lot. Like if you spend 2 to 3 hours looking to make conversations every day, like you will make $300,000 or $400,000 a year. Like there's no doubt about it. But this is what people don't do, right? Every time an agent's struggling, I ask them like, hey, show me your calendar and how many hours you spent doing conversations this past week. And it's like 0, right? I'm like, well, are you surprised that you're struggling? Like, well, what did you expect to happen here? Because you're not doing the activity that you need to do in order to make money. This is a simple template that we have. It's a Google sheet, but it basically lays out green activities, right? So days of the month across the top, and just every single day of the week, you can track what did you do that day. How many conversations did you have? How many leads did you add to your database? How many buyer consultations did you do? How many buyer's rep agreements did you get signed? You guys got to do it all the time, so you guys are lucky, but that's coming for all of us. How many leads did you send to get pre-qualified? This is a humongous metric. Like I know with our lending partners, for every 4 leads we send them, we will get 2 to 3 closings out of it, right? So if we get to the point where it's somebody who raises their hand and says, yes, I want to be pre-qualified, and they go through the process with the lender, that is a metric where if you can do that 1 time a week, you almost will guarantee that you have 2 closings a month, right? So the 5 conversations a day, the 25 a week lead to 1 person actually getting pre-qualified, you know you will have 1 closing, right? Because you're gonna get 4 pre-qualified a month, and 1 of those 4 guaranteed will close, and probably will be 2. So that's a huge metric that I think you gotta have a really good relationship with a lender, and they got to be a partner in your business. A lot of agents, and this is a business practice that we did for a long time and like really fixed in the last 12 months, is they would just send their clients to like whatever lender friend last brought donuts to the party, the realtor meeting, and there's no system, right? So you may have 5 clients that are like going through the pre-qualification process, but you have no idea, have they been followed up on? What stage of the process are they in? Did they start the loan application? Are they pre-qualified and the lender never told you? Like, you have no idea what's going on with these people. And so there's no predictable outcome. And so we've really narrowed that down, and we have a lending team that works real closely with our team, and they're in our business every single day. They come to all of our meetings. They're calling the agents once a week. There's really dedicated follow-up for the leads that are being sent to be pre-qualified. So we know that the agents, if you're doing, again, easy question, right? You don't have any business right now. How many leads have you sent to the lender to get pre-qualified? Because we get plenty of leads that come in, but if you're not taking that step to get them pre-qualified, how can you expect them to buy anything? So that's a super important metric to measure. Listing appointments gone on, listing agreements signed, and then I like to focus on social media posts and emails to the database. I think it's the most important thing we can be doing in life is to create clients out in the universe that don't know that we exist. I'll talk more about that in a second. But again, you don't have to do all of these things every single day, but it's something that you can track on a daily basis. So on a weekly and monthly basis, you can have goals based on all of these different actions, right? So don't feel like I gotta do 10 of these things every single day. It could be 10 one day and 0 on the rest, and then 2 listing appointments next week and no listing appointments the next week. But you can build targetable goals that hey, how many listing appointments do you have to go on to get 1 listing? It depends, right? It depends on your business, but some of you are better at it, some of you are not, but what's that? Yeah, I mean, most of the time, I would say most people have a 50 plus. I mean, if you get the listing appointment, you're gonna probably be converting 50 to 75% of those, right? In most cases. So then the other things down here are blue time. I think blue time is like personal time. And I think it's important that we actually track that too, right? How much time do you do personal development? Reading, podcasts, meditation, whatever it is that is like personal development to you. And then I like to track minutes of exercise too. I think it's important for us to, if we're healthy physically, we're healthy mentally, and we're gonna be healthy in our business. And then red time is admin stuff. So be conscious about how much time you spend doing admin things, because I think, we think about, okay, I'm gonna send an email to the database, like hitting send is the green time, right? The 3 hours that you spent putting that email together is red time. So it shouldn't take you 3 hours. You gotta figure out a system that makes that a little bit easier and more efficient, because the action item of sending it is green, but all the time you took to put it together is red. And it doesn't have to be super complex. I mean, that's a whole nother class on email marketing strategy, but my theory on that is like, do it very simply. All we do is a video every week to the database. That's the real estate video of the week, and then maybe a couple of new listings that we have on the team. A VA does the whole entire thing. All I gotta do is produce the video and send it to them, and they do the whole thing for us. So it takes me no additional time to make that happen. And even if I had to, it's a very quick process, 15 minutes to build that email versus we overthink it and we spend 3 hours. And then most people aren't gonna read it anyways, right? So don't put too much time into something that is really just touching people is the activity. It doesn't have to be a really thorough, like 85-page email of every event in Spokane and all the stuff. People like to do really complex stuff, which I think you don't get as much ROI on. So tracking actions, that's a big one, right? Just track actions every single day. And that's how you know whether or not you're having your conversations or not. And if you don't do conversations on 2 days, what does that mean for the next 3 days? You have 10 extra to do, right? So you don't have to do 5 every day, but if you miss a day, that means you just gotta do 10 the next day. And if you miss 2 days, that means you gotta do 15 on the 3rd day, right? So it's easy to just back that stuff up. And then the question is like, how do you go from selling that 1 house a month to 2, 3, or 4 houses a month? And this is the magic behind it, is you can just still have 100 real estate conversations. Because what's gonna happen in life is when you start doing your 100 a week, you're gonna get better at it, right? You're just gonna learn. I mean, the only way to get better at something is to actually do a lot of it. And as you get better at it, your conversion rate's gonna go up. You're gonna get really good at asking for referrals. And so you don't have to multiply the initial effort, because the return on your effort is just gonna get refined and better. And the same 100 real estate conversations is gonna start after year 1, it's gonna result in 2 deals a month. After year 3, it's gonna result in 3 deals a month. And it's gonna compound on itself because you're just gonna get better at it. And that's the truth of everything, right? If you're really good at knitting, you weren't that good when you first started, and it took you a lot longer to figure it out, and you just get better over time. So it's the same of real estate conversations. And then the theory of deals have babies, right? To me, the only way I really push, do you guys have like the trailer homes, like really super cheap, crappy stuff in your market, right? That you don't wanna do because you're like, I'm not gonna make any money doing that, right? to me, do as many of those as you possibly can, right? Yes, I live in Hawaii and we have like, multi-million-dollar properties, but we also sell lots for $15,000, right? You can get an acre of land near the volcano on our island for like 15 grand. And you can get homes in that area for 200,000 or 300,000. And so a lot of agents get in and they want to be selling Sunset and sell $2 million houses, right? And they say, well, how do I get to become a luxury agent selling $2 million houses? I say, you go sell $15,000 lots. That's how you do it, is you got to learn the business and you got to do deals. And so I love a new agent who comes in and hustles, and that was just my personal experience. When I first started in the cubicle next to me at the Coldwell Banker office, a lady was retiring, Ann Lozansky. I still think about her all the time because I feel like she really helped me in my career. And she was retiring and she had like 35 listings in South Kona, which was like really cheap listings that nobody wanted to deal with. And she was trying to give them away and nobody would take them. And I'm like 6 months in the business and I'm like, Ann, I'll take them all. And she's like, you can have them all. And so I do like 20 deals my first year just off of these listings because they're like super cheap, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 lots. But I learned a ton in my first year and I did a bunch of deals, which then led to referrals and led to repeat deals. And then somebody built a house on it and they sold the house 3 years later, and like it exponentially created business. So you just got to do deals, right? Like it doesn't, I mean, to me, the more deals you can possibly do, there's more babies that come out of it and your database builds. And so you don't have to do as many conversations, right? Because the deals are already there and they're going to multiply. And then momentum. I think this is a huge thing, is like the flywheel, right? Is like when you start turning the wheel, it's like really slow and heavy in the beginning, but once you get it going, it takes a minimal amount of effort to keep it going. And unfortunately, that principle for a lot of realtors is like what kills their business, is they get really busy and then they stop. They do 5 deals in the spring because the market got hot, and then they just like take the summer off and go cruising and don't do any more deals. And then in the fall, they're struggling again and they're trying to get deals going again instead of consistently keeping the momentum going. So momentum's a powerful thing. You just gotta get disciplined about like, hey, if you have a great quarter, a great 6 months, like you cannot take the next 6 months off because you made a bunch of money and you're chilling, because when that momentum slows down, it's really hard to get it back going again. Okay, so the secret is consistency and action. That's it, right? If you just show up every day, you do your 5 conversations, and you just do that every single day, I mean, that's it. That's really all it takes, and probably the hardest thing for people to wrap their head around is, and I personally probably work 6 hours a day. Like I don't work that much. People are always like, oh, you're so busy and you do so much stuff. And I'm like, not really. I just have a really disciplined 6 hours that I work very focused on. And I spend a lot of time with my kids. I rarely work on the weekends. I do stuff like this. I'm like obviously not working right now, right? But the business continues because when I am working, it's very focused and it's consistent. I don't take a lot of time off and get distracted. So stay consistent. How much time do you guys want to spend on buyer's rep agreement? This is like a piece that I know is super hot topic, but I know you guys already do it. Because of the change in the industry, this is such a big topic right now. And I'm very fortunate. One of the great things about this company is there's a ton of collaboration. And so I've been a part of some really high level groups over the last 3 months, thinking about like, how do we best deal with this, right? How do we best train our agents and how do we boil this thing down? And so this is what I've come away with over the last couple of months and boiled it down to, and it will continue to develop. But D plus V equals 3%. And I've been told like, don't use 3% because it looks like we're price fixing. This is like my personal opinion. You should get 3% as a buyer's agent, right? So I'm not telling you have to do this. We're not colluding right now, right? But this is the formula to get a full buyer's commission every single time. And our operation is extremely buyer heavy, right? We're like a 65% buyer transaction operation. So buyers are near and dear to my heart. Buyer's agents are near and dear to my heart. I personally in my business have always enjoyed being a buyer's agent more. A lot of agents want to be listing agents. I just never subscribed to that. Like if listings came, cool, we'll do listings. But when you help a buyer, like you change their life. They're your friend forever. They love you. They refer you to all their friends. A lot of times, I mean, the seller market has been great, but I started in a market where like houses wouldn't sell after 6 months. And then now you have somebody who's pissed at you, that thinks you're terrible, and you did everything you could possibly do, but it's just the house didn't sell or it was overpriced or whatever, right? So I just always enjoyed being a buyer's agent more. So this is something I'm really hyper focused on. And if you ask me to like do a class, I can always do a better class on buyers than I can on sellers. I think we got some great seller programs, but it's just not like what I'm super passionate about. So here's the formula. So it's a formula for a consultation system, right? Because this is where I think, so you guys have already been forced to do it, but like, are you having really solid consultations? And that's really what we gotta focus on the buy side, because like sellers are gonna start, have traditionally interviewed agents. I think that's gonna happen more on the buy side now because there's gonna be more awareness. And if they're gonna have to sign an agreement, they're gonna wanna make an informed decision, right? So this is a real quick overview of what it looks like. So the first thing you wanna uncover buyer goals and dreams. That's building rapport. We're gonna go to that in more detail. You wanna discover the property needs. You do this second, right? A lot of times we do this first. We ask how many bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage. That's really like not deep rapport building conversation, right? My favorite question for a buyer is tell me the dream. Especially in our market, because a lot of times the second home owners, retirees. But even here, like the people that you deal with on a daily basis, buying a home is a dream, right? It's an aspiration. And if you know what that is and why they're doing it, you can better serve them and better connect with them. So that's always my favorite script is tell me the dream. They'll spill their guts when you ask them that. Okay, so we got property needs. Then we discuss compensation at the very end. We don't lead with compensation. That's what I think a lot of agents are afraid of is a compensation discussion. But until we have the first two discovery pieces done, we don't talk about compensation. And then we summarize with a strategic plan, and I'll talk about that in a second. So there's plenty more details here. In the discovery process, and I have a download afterwards you guys are gonna get that kind of goes through this and has 2 pages of example questions that you can build into your discovery process. But I think about this like at a doctor or an attorney, right? Like if you talk to a doctor, you don't walk in there and they tell you it's gonna be $7,000 for the surgery. They're gonna like go through a deep discovery process of what your problems are and what your history has been and all kinds of different things in order to get to the point where they decide on what they're gonna do for you and then what it's gonna cost, right? So think about that from that process is like really uncovering and asking deep questions and having a system in place, a questionnaire that you can really start to identify like what is the deep reasoning behind their desire to sell or buy in that discovery process. But thinking about it as discovery, right? Not like it's not just like how many bedrooms and bathrooms. Like getting real deep on that, because I think that's the thing that we miss. All right, so after we go through discovery and we have a deep understanding of why they want to buy and then an idea of what their needs are in a property, and a lot of times it doesn't align. Have you guys ever had like a buyer who tells you what they want and you show them all of the houses that fit what they want and they say like, they hate all the houses, and it's because we probably don't understand what it is that they're actually looking for. And I think about other greatest question in the discovery process is tell me more about that, right? When they say, I want privacy, like tell me more about that. What does that mean to you? Because people, it's very subjective, right? Like what does privacy mean to you versus to you? It could be two very different things. I had a buyer tell me one time, like privacy means that they can't smell their neighbor's cooking. Got it. Like, I don't know, like, I would have never defined it that way, but now I understand, like, you don't want to smell your neighbor's cooking. Like, she must have had a neighbor in the past that like had really poor cooking skills or something. But so asking that question, like, tell me more about that. Tell me more, why is that important to you? And digging deep on not just why do you need 3 bedrooms, right? A lot of times, and here's a great example for the Hawaii market. People will move to Hawaii from Washington and they want 3,500 square feet minimum because you guys have really big square footage because you spend a lot of time indoors, right? It's cold half the year and stuff. In Hawaii, like a 2,000 square foot house is like massive. Like people live in 1,500, 1,800 square feet. It's plenty enough for a 3-bedroom house. So people have this conception that they need something that they really don't need. And I have the responsibility to inform them or help educate them that it's not necessary. And they're limiting their property search based on a criteria that they're not gonna be happy with once they buy the house, right? So you don't need that much square footage. You're gonna pay way more for a house. So you could get like a really killer 2,000 square foot house for the same price as a 3,000 square foot house. And you're gonna be way happier in 2,000 square feet because it's got a better view and you got a pool and all these different things instead of the square footage. So does that make sense? Like helping through that process and understanding why that makes sense to them. And then, okay, so let's get into the value discussion here. So after we talk about discovery, right, the D, and we get deep on what they understand, now we gotta talk about our value, right? And what are we gonna do for them? And this is another thing I think we're self-conscious about or we're not real confident in. So you gotta spend some time really evaluating what your value is. And there's 2 ways to do this, right? One is in that one-to-one consultation where we sit down and we have a meeting and we talk about discovery and then we communicate our value. And there's the framework I think we gotta use in this, and this is like the easy 3 questions you gotta answer for yourself is who you are, right? This is your resume, your experience, your background. If you're new, rely on your brokerage's experience, rely on your team's experience, but also rely on your personal experience. You guys all have a background, right, in something that you did before real estate, and that expertise can be something that can be valuable to a client. It doesn't have to be the number of homes you sold and the volume you did. That will happen over time, but really what is it your experience that will help them, especially in Hawaii? we tell people like, hey, if you just move to Hawaii and you're a real estate agent, like you have valuable experience figuring out how to move here and you can help people with that. So if somebody else wants to move here, you rely on that you're a Hawaii relocation expert because you did it yourself, right? I've never relocated to Hawaii. I know nothing about it. I've never shipped a container there, like, you know, so I don't have expertise in that. So those are the kind of things you can dig deep about in your personal value proposition that you can communicate and use as part of your value. And then what do you do? So who you are is the first one. What do you do? The script for this is, I help people like you buy a home for the first time in Western Spokane all the time. Like that's what I do. So once I do my discovery and I know exactly what you're looking for, I frame my value proposition around what you're looking for, right? I help people like you buy a short-term vacation rental on the Kona Coast all the time. Like this is what I do. This is exactly what I do. You're so lucky. You found exactly the guy that does what you need, right? So think about it in that way is what do you do? And then how do you do it? This is what you got to think about. Like what is your personal way of providing that service to them? Is it through all the things you would normally do, but articulate it, right? You're gonna set them up on a property search. You're gonna go take them on tours. You're gonna help them understand neighborhoods. You may go do video tours if they're not here in town. Like what are all the things that you do? Because we take that for granted as that's what we do, but we don't tell our clients that. And they don't know what we actually do because we don't tell them, right? So how do you do that? How can you uniquely help them reach their goals? If they're looking to, do a short-term vacation rental, how do you help them evaluate whether it's going to be a good return on investment? Do you get the rental history? Your expertise, you'll know like what HOA fees are, what property taxes are, like communicate all of that and how you help somebody achieve their goal, right? So it makes sense? So who you are, what you do, and then how you do it. To me, value squared, right? So the V is there either way. Value squared is one to many. So we can do this on a one-to-one basis where we sit down and we talk to somebody and we go through this consultation process. I believe if you really want to scale a business, and this is the core of how we've scaled our business, is it's one-to-many communication, right? Mass marketing and sharing our value proposition far and wide. So social media, YouTube, events, email campaigns, mail, radio, all of the traditional advertising. My whole goal in life today as a team lead is to create value in the marketplace where if people are coming to us, right? Like we don't have to, we have plenty of prospecting activities. We have Zillow and we do all different things. But on a daily basis, you guys were talking about earlier, like the easy show one house and then write a contract, right? That becomes a way more common occurrence if you're doing this, right? So in my market, if you come to Hawaii, like, and you go around town with me, like people will be like, oh, you're the real estate guy. I watch you on YouTube. Like I saw your market report on Instagram. Like people know who I am because we've done a ton of this. Like we just put a ton of media out, and every single time I go through TSA guys watch lots of YouTube. Like everybody at TSA knows me because they're all on YouTube watching market reports. So think about this, like if you're uncomfortable on camera and you're uncomfortable doing mass media, like there's no way you're gonna create the scale to grow a business like we'll talk about this afternoon, right? So this is a huge one, is when you do this is the goal. To me, this is like right now, the mantra is you wanna create clients in the marketplace who don't know, that you don't know exist, right? And I just had this happen a couple of weeks ago. I was sitting in my office on a Friday afternoon and my phone rings and I answer it, and he says, hey, this is Dave Pearson. We spoke like 3 years ago. My friend Jim connected us, and I appreciate all the videos over the last 3 years you've sent me. I think I found the house for my wife and I. Can you write the offer? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Give me the address. I look it up. It's like a $1.3 million house. Ask him a few details. It's gonna be all cash. This is Friday. By Sunday morning, we're in escrow, and 3 weeks later, we're closed, right? Like the easiest 35 grand I've ever made in my life, right? But it sounds easy, but it's because for 3 years, I've been his realtor and I didn't know he existed. Like I forgot the conversation we had 3 years ago, but he watched all my videos and he reads all the emails and he gets the market updates. And are we doing that, right? Ask yourself, like, is there people out in the community that are looking at you and consider you their realtor, but you don't even know they exist? Because that's really the goal in the big picture of this is value squared, where you have so much value out there that it's an easy conversation when it gets to the compensation discussion, right? I didn't have to charge him a buyer's commission, but if I did, he would have been okay, right? I mean, I guarantee he would have said okay. So the outcome is inbound clients, right? This is the magic question that you want to get asked. Are you taking on new clients? Right? If you get asked that question, you know they're going to pay you a commission. There's no doubt about it because they're reaching out for your service. You're not reaching out for theirs, right? You're not trying to earn their business. Okay, so 3% every time. And again, you pick your own percentage. don't want to get in trouble. So now we get to the commission discussion, right? Now we get to compensation discussion. And we only do that after we've had a thorough discovery and value conversation. We never have the commission discussion up front. And this is the most critical thing. And this is critical in all really conversations throughout our real estate process, but framing the conversation. And in the context of compensation, we have to frame the discussion based on most likely outcomes. And I think the mistake that we're making, and a lot of my agents are really scared about, is they think they have to say, you're gonna owe me 3% at the end of the transaction. And that's very, very unlikely, right? I mean, that is the most unlikely thing that's gonna happen, even when the world changes come August. In my estimation, I believe, and we'll see, I mean, so here's a market data question. How many, because they already can, how many listings are on the market offering zero compensation right now? Couple, right? Out of thousands of listings, there's maybe a couple. So we're talking about a 0.001% problem, right? That we're worried about, that we're building our whole entire worldview off of. So the most likely outcome, and here's a script, and you guys will get this in the download, so you don't have to write this down or take a picture of it or anything. In the vast majority of cases, insert market data, right? 98% of the time, sellers are still offering compensation. I believe that's gonna be the case. That's a whole separate discussion in terms of our conversation with sellers. But in the vast majority of cases, sellers are gonna be offering compensation. So when we make an offer on that home, I'll accept the seller's offer of compensation on your behalf, and it won't cost you anything out of pocket. Vast majority of cases, this is gonna work. Unlikely event that doesn't happen and they're not offering compensation, we're gonna do two things. The first one is we're gonna negotiate into the offer. We're gonna ask for a seller credit. That credit will go to you and either come to us directly, or the seller will credit us, depending on how this all works out. But again, no net cost to you, the seller will be paying for our compensation. The other option is we'll just negotiate into the price. So if the seller doesn't want to do that, we'll just offer less on the property, negotiate on the price, and the net cost to you will be the same as if the seller was paying it. So no additional net cost to you in the transaction. If all of those options don't work out, in the very, very unlikely case that we cannot get the seller to provide us with any compensation, it can be part of your closing costs when we close. But you're gonna be 100% clear and comfortable with that before we make an offer on a home. This isn't gonna be a surprise, right? We're gonna go into that negotiation on the home knowing what your overall closing costs are gonna be. I'm gonna make sure that you're very comfortable with that and it doesn't screw up your loan program, or it's money that you actually have and you can afford. And we're gonna have that conversation before we make the offer and definitely before we open escrow. Are you comfortable with that? Most people are gonna say yes, right? And we'll move forward. And so we gotta frame the conversation in most likely outcomes, which is not that the seller's gonna pay 3% more for the house because they're gonna come out of pocket, which I think is gonna be a 1% problem, and we gotta not focus on 1% problems. This is a non-politically correct part of the slideshow. So I always get asked, right? What if after all of this, you get this great conversation and you provided discovery and you provided value and you had this great script on compensation? What if they refuse to pay you? Just move on. Don't worry about it. That's gonna be a 1% problem. I think, I'm saying the seller doesn't wanna pay, the buyer doesn't, if the buyer doesn't wanna commit to sign a buyer's rep agreement, it's very unlikely. We were talking earlier before we started. I have some proof of concept of this because October of last year, when this whole NAR thing started, we started training all the new agents that came in to get buyer's rep agreement signed. So they had no idea there was a world where you didn't do that, right? They just started doing it. And it's like 100% success rate. Like every one of these brand new agents who has no track record, has no production, they're having the conversation, they're well trained, they have the conversation, and they're getting buyer's rep agreement signed, and they're getting paid 3% when the seller's offering 2.5%. So my experienced agents, I'm like, what's the problem here? Christine's getting paid 3% when the seller was offering 2.5%, and she's been doing this for 2 months, And so this is a big mental block in our head, I think, that doesn't really exist if we do this well and we're prepared to have the conversation. So, and then in the 1% of the time when somebody really refuses, just screw them and move on. There's plenty of people who will work with you. All right. So remember, this is final thoughts here in terms of principles. Everything works and nothing doesn't. This is one of my favorites, right? Is everybody's like, what about this? And what about that? What about this? And I say, do it. Whatever it is, do it. It's when you don't do anything that it doesn't work, right? So like we talked about conversations and all these other things. to me, as long as you just take enough action, stuff works out. So everything will work eventually. You just gotta continue to do it and stick with it. I think about this in the context of YouTube. Like, people see how much business we generate off of YouTube. It took me like 3 years to get to 100 subscribers on YouTube. Like, it took forever. My brother used to think I was an idiot. I'd spend time making these videos. And now it's like a consistent source of business, but it took a long time for that to happen. And it was just like sticking with, I knew over time it would work out, right? And so you just gotta stick with stuff. It took probably 18 months before I got my first lead that closed. But again, you do 3 videos and it doesn't work and you quit, and it's like, yep, didn't work. That definitely doesn't work if you don't do it, right? So, all right, done is better than perfect. This is drives everybody in my world crazy, especially my wife. But I love imperfect action over perfect inaction, right? And so I'm a jump off the cliff and build the plane on the way down kind of person, because you'll build a really good plane if you're under that much pressure, right? So this holds you guys back. You're like, you reread the email 6 times and you redo the video 6 times instead of actually doing it. And so my imperfect thing will beat your perfect thing that you didn't do every single day of the week, right? So just let me live on your shoulder. When you're overthinking something and you're saying it's not perfect, just think done is better than perfect and just do it. So I regularly give presentations with typos and misspellings. My wife's a school teacher, it drives her crazy, but I'm like, hey, it's done, right? It's done, we got through it, and I didn't overthink it. And I went to public school, so I don't know how to spell. Did you guys catch any misspellings? There probably was some in here. Focus on the process and not the outcome. This is important in team building, but also just in our personal business. Is we want to have that 1 house a month, right? We want to make that $100,000 or that $200,000, but it's not the outcome that matters. It's the daily activities of those 5 conversations, right? It's the process. And in the context of building a team, the best team members I have and the ones that are like in leadership positions are the ones who are willing to just put the work in with no expectation of an outcome. A lot of the systems and processes we've built were built by people who we're just operating off of faith that it would work out, right? Like, my leads manager has built all kinds of systems, all kinds of amazing follow-up campaigns in our database, because I told her I'd give her 5% of every deal that ever closed out of the database. I didn't know if it would ever work out, and now she makes a ton of money off of 5% of every single deal because we're doing 600 deals a year, right? So focus on the process. Everybody wants to be a part of the Super Bowl winning team. Nobody wants to put in the work, the 6 days a week of practice that it takes to win the Super Bowl, right? So think about that and look for that in team members. To me, don't worry about experience or expertise or education. Like, look for somebody who's willing to put in the work and not necessarily have any expectation on outcome. All right, and then whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. This is like Henry Ford's big thing, right? It's all in your head. I think back to 2019 where I saw guys like this giving a presentation and I thought to myself, I can do that. That's all it took. was just the belief that you can do it. So think about that every day. If you think I can't do it, we talk about this all the time in the framing, the way we talk about ourselves in business. Like, don't ever say I'm not tech savvy, because if you say that, your brain hears it and then you become non-tech savvy, right? If you say I'm bad on video, then you're gonna be bad on video. If you say I cannot speak publicly, then you cannot do it, right? So you gotta speak in the context of you can, and you gotta train your brain to believe it. And it's a very simple concept, but I think it's hard for people to get over, right? So focus on it. Every time you say you can't, stop yourself and say I can, and then you'll get better at it. Okay, this is the download. If you wanna I have this D plus V equals 3%. It's a download. It's got pages of questions and details on how to build your value proposition, how to ask questions in discovery, and then it has the script that I showed on that last slide.